Here we go. Potentially one of the trickier episodes for us to record. Certainly one of the trickiest ones I've had to write. How you been feeling sort of in the lead up to this episode?
I'm not.
Oh God, she's gone around.
I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well, Hame. I've been crying for the last.
Oh,
and
no.
now I'm going to cry for another hour. Yeah, I'm not doing well. Honestly, it's
I
not
thought
great.
we'd get to about 45 minutes in before the cracked voices.
No.
With less than 20 seconds in.
Yeah, I feel anxious because I feel like this podcast is going to be even harder to do, but even harder for the listeners to listen to because nobody wants to hear a middle-aged woman sobbing into a microphone, do they?
Well, don't they? Isn't that not what they come for?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But just before anyone worries, you can tell them, Hamish, what's happening today.
Well, today is my final episode of Sober Awkward as a host. It has been a ridiculously hard decision, and we're sort of going to get to the reasons in a little bit. But what I was really keen to do on this final episode, because the risk is it just all becomes about the fact it's the final episode. And I think that is a bit self-indulgent. So instead, what I'm trying to do, when I've tried to do in the writing, it was really hard writing this one, was to still make it fun, to still make it informative, to still make it silly, so that it's sort of like every other episode in a way and can be useful to people, whether or not they're 30 days sober or 10 years sober. I hope it will still have some nuggets in it that can be useful to you. Do you think we can get through this?
I'm not sure whether the nuggets are going to be coming from me because I'm going to be sort of blubbing in the corner as you speak. But yes, I don't know what to say, Hame.
This is not a monologue from me with occasional blubbery from you.
I know, I think it is.
I'm going to need at least 20% of the dialogue to be from your end.
This is harder than when Lucy left, honestly. This is harder. Yes, much harder.
That was the reason this was such an hard episode for me was that I cried during you and Lucy's last episode. That was hard for me, and you guys had only been doing it for a year.
Yeah.
And it was sort of weird because it's weird listening to a podcast because you sort of feel like you have a relationship with the presenters, even if you don't. And that episode felt like a breakup.
Yes.
It's weird that this feels like a breakup because between you and me, nothing's really changing. It's just from now on, our conversations aren't recorded and edited anymore. So all our ifs and buts and stutters and the jokes that are too rude to make the podcast can just sort of continue in our normal lives. Yeah. And it does feel significant that we won't be recording them anymore.
I think it's about change, isn't it, a bit, Hamish? I remember we called that episode with Lucy Changes or Change or something like that, to Changes. And I feel like change is hard. It's like going sober is hard. It's a massive change in your life. And this, to me, it feels like a big change. And it not only makes me, I don't know, it makes me nervous, but it makes me happy. But I think it's just the fact that it's a change, whether it's right or wrong or whatever. That's not what I'm feeling. What I'm feeling is just like the change is overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary. Change is always scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
It was tempting to write an episode where it was going to be like an hour-long, laborious goodbye to much fanfare and ticker tape and thrown roses and thrown knickers and fireworks and general rapturous applause and standing ovations. That's all. I was tempted to write that episode.
Yeah.
And I kind of think we do write that episode if and when you decide you don't want to host the podcast anymore. I will help you write that episode if that day comes. All right.
I would definitely expect that if this podcast ever actually ends, which I'm sure it will at some stage.
Okay, well, that episode is on ice. I've sort of in my head kind of scripted that episode, but that's your final episode. My one is going to be a little bit different. Like I said, I hope this is still going to be useful to you. This is not just me patting myself on the back for an hour. So what I've sort of tried to do with this one is I wanted to separate what I've learned from sobriety, which is the sort of stuff we talk about in every episode, from what I've learned from firstly being a listener to this podcast before I joined it, then hosting it and writing it, producing, editing, touring it, running our social media channels, and being part of the Cuppa community. Later on, I will get to why I've made this decision. But I sort of hope that this was the best way to not only bring you more into the conversation, so it's not just me talking to myself, but also to hopefully offer our listeners some reassurances of what they might learn from listening to this podcast and how they might grow through their sobriety. I guess from having this, this podcast is for you and me what it is also, I hope, for the listeners, which is a place where we can be held accountable for our sobriety, where we can feel less alone, we can feel
Yeah.
part of the community, even if we never meet or see each other. And I want to tell listeners, whether you're new or old to them, what I've learned from just being a part of this podcast, because I feel like there'll be some similarities in what I've learned to what you've learned, and what I feel any listener can learn from checking in weekly with something like this podcast. That's the way I've
Yeah.
structured it. I've broken it down into the three biggest lessons I've learned from the pod, and then we'll talk after that about why I've made this decision a little bit later.
Okay. I see where you're going with this, Hamish. There is a chance in this reflective episode that Hame and I have both learnt similar lessons through the medium of this podcast. And no matter where you are in your sobriety journeys, and no matter where you sit on this great drinking spectrum, we hope that you can benefit in some of the same ways too. So, Hame, it was back in July of 2022 that it seems like ages ago, doesn't it? That I asked you to join me for a walk, during which I told you that Lucy was leaving the podcast and I wanted you to join in as the new host. Now, 3.5 years later and hundreds of episodes too, what do you feel you've learned along the way?
Well, let me start off by saying that for those that don't know, I actually interviewed Vic on a podcast of my own before this podcast even existed. And then I think it was about a month after I'd interviewed you, you met Lucy and you started the podcast soon after that.
Yeah.
So, any credit that anyone ever tries to give me for the success of the podcast, I always try and divert back to you and Lucy. Originally, it was literally you guys that started it from absolutely nothing to being a huge success. I just sort of got on the bandwagon at exactly the right time and managed to ride this success train and take some credit, which is not entirely fair because I do think you and Lucy were the OGs in that respect. So I was a listener to this podcast for about a year before I joined it. So even though I was still drinking, I was listening because it was funny and you two had great chemistry. So I always say that although our podcast is aimed at people who want to drink less alcohol or not drink at all, you can still listen even if you are a drinker. We are welcome to all, and we hope that there is fun and humour and cock jokes that apply for anyone, whether or not you're doing it with a beer in hand or not.
Yep.
So my intention when you did eventually ask me to join the podcast was that, well, I was a young dad and I was a man, so maybe I could appeal to our male listeners. My background was in comedy, so we hoped I could sort of lean into growing the comedy side of this podcast. And as someone who was giving up without having a problem with drinking, we hope that we could sort of broaden our audience to those people as well. Emphasize the point that we always do, which is that sobriety and the benefits of it are really available to everyone. It's not just serious drinkers who can benefit from drinking less. And then my plan was I'll do a year. So I think the first thing to say is, given that I'm here 3.5 years later, it's obviously been a huge amount of fun. And I've never thought about ending it because we've just gone, let's do another year, let's do another year, let's do another year. We've both been having so much fun that why would we stop, really? Now, obviously, it's been fun because I'm recording it with you, right? And we've become such amazing friends, and you've become more than that. It was like a really important person in my life and in the life of my family, and vice versa, I hope. I think most significantly has been the growth that I've felt outside of this podcast. So obviously I've hoped that I've become a better presenter and a better writer and a better producer, but really it's sort of the growth that happens in your life as a result of sobriety or as a result of having a job that you love that is the most interesting bit.
Yeah.
So what I did, so I sat down for literally weeks. I've thought, what are the three biggest lessons I've learned from this podcast? And I would actually say that the number one lesson, and this is almost even more important than everything I've learned as a result of being sober, is how it has taught me about empathy towards anyone struggling with any form of addiction, but obviously with alcohol. So I didn't know anyone sober when I got sober. And truthfully, I didn't know that many people who had any kind of addiction issues. And of the ones that I did know, I certainly never had any kind of deep and meaningful conversation about the struggles that they're going through. Right? I didn't really know anything there was about it. And now I feel like, I've spent so much of the last few years researching this topic and speaking to people and our listeners about it. It's got to the point where A, I feel very comfortable in the conversation about addiction or about loss, all the horrible things that come as a result of an addiction to booze or drugs. I got to the point now where nothing really surprises me. I certainly don't judge anyone. I think it's very easy to judge people with an addiction if you don't know anything about it, because you just
Mm.
think, oh, put yourself together, or just stop drinking, or just stop doing drugs. You've got that sort of level one understanding where you really don't fully comprehend what's going on behind the scenes. And I feel as a result of that, I've got this huge amount of sympathy and understanding in those conversations. I really don't judge
Yeah.
anyone, no matter how bad the drinking or the drug taking or the family spiral has gotten. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm comfortable in those conversations. I feel comfortable asking the difficult questions and going to some pretty dark and sensitive places in those conversations. I feel like really when you're sober, people open up in a way that no, like a group of sober people
Yeah.
open up to each other in a way that a group of any other people have never done in my life.
Yeah.
Within 5 minutes of sitting down with somebody sober, they know you're sober and they'll tell you about childhood trauma or
Yeah.
about a breakdown of a relationship. And I just feel that I've grown so much as a person insofar that I can manage and even give advice in those situations.
Can I just butt in there, Hamish? I
Yeah.
just wanted to say about those conversations and about your empathy there. I find it so interesting, and I wonder why it is. Is it slightly that I know for me that this is true, that there's a part of you that can see yourself in that person? Would that be right to say that? You can see that even though you were a normal drinker, that you can still see that there's a part of you that could have gone to that next stage or that could have ended up like that had something awful or a massive trauma happened to you. Do you think that makes you more empathic knowing that anyone in the whole world can go from being a normal drinker to being a problem drinker or an addict? Like when I first went to an AA meeting, that's what struck me. It is what I had stopped, yet I could feel myself in those people and know that I could have ended up in that place if I had continued.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's both that and I guess a reinforced gratitude for the privilege that I've had in my life. Who's to know whether or not I would have turned to alcohol or drugs if I'd been the victim of childhood trauma, or if my parents had been alcoholics and I'd seen some of the awful things that many of the people that listen to this podcast have. I might well have done. And the fact that I've had such a cushy ride of it so far in my life sort of A, gives me more empathy for them, and B, gives me more gratitude for the way that my life has gone. And I think also, given the amount of research we do for this podcast, we have got this deeper knowledge, I feel now, that I mean, I say deeper, I had zero knowledge a few years ago, so certainly deeper than then, of how addictive this substance is, how normalized it is, how thrust upon us it is by society, by pretty much everywhere you look, everywhere you see. Even just, I was in the gym this morning, and the minute that the class finished, I overheard someone going, "Well, I don't know how much I'll train next week. It depends how much wine I drink this week." Like
Yeah.
that was 8 in the morning. You can't really avoid it. So it's
Yeah.
hardly surprising that millions of people end up with a huge issue with it. And I
Totally
think
agree.
prior to that, I was just naive. I had really no idea about this drug. And I'll talk a little more about that a little later. So I think it's sort of been like opening my eyes to what is actually going on out there.
Yeah.
And like, I keep coming back to that word empathy, but yeah, just going a little bit easier on people who are having a really tough time with booze and drugs because, even in my story is very, very tame. Yours is slightly less tame, but still in the grand scheme of things,
Mm.
so ordinary in comparison to some of the people that we've met along the way.
Yeah,
Have
and lucky too. Like, I think a lot of it's luck. It can be just a bad choice at a party that ends up leading you down a very dodgy road. And that,
Mhm.
that certainly happened to me a few times, and I could have taken it further than it has already went. And mine was just like a normal binge drinking habit. So yeah, I can understand how it gets out of hand very quickly. It's crazy.
Coming back to that word privilege, really, but I think one of the great privileges of hosting this podcast, and I guess for us being a visible face of someone that operates in this space is that people come up with you and they share your stories.
Yeah.
And I've been so inspired by I mean, the hundreds of conversations we've had through these stories, right? People who have turned their lives around when it looked like there was no way out.
Mm.
It's just wild. Yeah, people have told us about losing their homes, their jobs, their families. They've been victims of physical and sexual abuse. They've been fighting a drug addiction at the same time as an alcohol addiction. And they've slowly found a way to turn their lives around and rebuild everything through going sober. And I would say I'm equally impressed and inspired by those people as the ones that come up to us who say, I'm in my 20s, I've drunk once or twice. It wasn't great for my mental health or my productivity, so I thought I'd give up now before it becomes an issue. Just incredible. Funny enough, the story for you, Vic. I was in a Uber. You know, we share quite openly, quite quickly. I was in an Uber for 15 minutes this week in Adelaide, and he picked me up like 11 at night, and I was saying, I'm exhausted. I don't even drink. I'm exhausted. This guy was 32, and he's never ever touched a drop of alcohol. The reason being is that his dad was an alcoholic, and he saw how it affected his dad. He ended up losing his life to cancer, and he was just a wonderful human, a wonderful dad, but he was a monster when he was drunk. He was like, I'm never ever going
Mm.
to drink. It was 11-minute this drive, and we had this conversation, and I was thinking,
Wow.
actually, that's so far removed from who I was, or it's so strong in a way to never just go, yeah, just not going to do it because it is thrust on you. Like we said, everywhere you look, it's thrust upon you. So I'm equally inspired by those that have never drunk or have drunk once and twice and gone, nah, as I am the people who have turned their lives around from,
Yeah.
seemingly rock bottoms.
Yeah, totally.
How do you feel about it all? I want to hear your opinion on.
Oh,
I don't want to feed you the questions, but yeah, my biggest takeaway from this podcast was increased empathy. Is that something that you've also felt and sort of reflecting on it?
well, I think I've never really thought about it in what I've learned from the podcast. It's funny to talk about it because I don't think I've mentally gone down that road because I'm too busy preparing it and writing it and doing everything that we do with it that I never really think about how I feel about it. But I absolutely know that I had no understanding of sobriety before I did it myself. And I genuinely thought that I would just stop drinking and carry on as normal. But there is nothing normal about completely real. This is what came up, that there is nothing normal about completely rebuilding your identity from scratch.
Mm.
So I think I've always been quite blasé about sobriety and about what it does to you. And now I'm empathic towards people because I know how bloody huge it can feel. I truly now understand what sobriety is. I know what it costs socially, how it disrupts the life you once had, how it shifts friendships, relationships, routines, and expectations. I know how it changes you, and I know how it changes how other people behave around you. And I know we both feel that at times. People often say, "You were never that bad to me." Like old mates, they would say, "Well, you were like everyone else. You were never that bad." And somehow that really invalidates my decision to stop. It undermines the choice. And honestly, it makes me really pissed off. Why on earth would I choose to make my life harder for no reason? So I know we go on about the benefits of sobriety, but to get to those benefits, you certainly need to go through some harder life choices and changes, which takes therapy and hard work. That's what I'm talking about here. And I don't like it when people undermine that path. I did it because I needed to. Perhaps not like you, Hame, but I certainly needed to give up drinking. And because sobriety, when somebody says, "Oh, you weren't that bad," I think they're saying that it's kind of like an easy thing to do. I'm like, no, 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 it's not easy. It's really, really brave. And being brave all the time can feel fucking hard, which is why sobriety is a hard path to choose until you get to a point when you feel like you're actually doing it properly. So, yes, I have huge empathy for anyone that starts this sober journey because it is very difficult, especially for heavy drinkers or grey area drinkers or anyone choosing sobriety. My empathy is absolutely skyrocketed for them since doing the podcast. I know how big it feels. I know how much courage it takes to stand up for yourself and take your life back. And I have nothing but respect for those people. And for you, Haim, too. You're somebody that has done this too. It doesn't really matter how or why or when. What matters is that you went from being someone who is a drinker to someone that's not. It's like what you say. I have equal empathy for everybody involved in this because it is still a huge decision, no matter where you sit on that spectrum.
I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because I was thinking about identity this week because James Clear went on the Diary CEO podcast, or I heard that episode, and so I reread the Atomic Habits chapter on identity because I think it's such a huge thing within sobriety. Is we
Mm,
think, no, I'm the wine girl to all of my friends, or like I'm the
yeah,
guy that your my mates can rely on to have a beer. So like, how could I ever do it? How could I ever identify as someone sober? Sober people are boring.
yeah,
And so I revisited that chapter. I was like, it's such an interesting thing, identity, because what is it? It's what you think of yourself and what you think your friends and family think of you, which in a
mhm,
way is huge, and you give it a huge amount of importance in your life. And on the other side, it's sort of nothing, right?
yeah,
It's nothing actually material. It's just hearsay that you believe.
yes,
And it's such an enormous thing to overcome because if you think I'm never someone that could go sober, you will never go sober. It's
yeah,
it's really as simple as that. And I think better understanding the makeup of an identity and how to rewrite one makes the entire process so much easier. Or it did for me anyway. So I always say, yeah, go and read some Quit Lit, but read things like Atomic Habits, which is about creating good habits or breaking bad habits or rewriting your identity, because I
mm,
kind of felt like that was almost, for me anyway, in my story, finding the root of that made it easier rather than reading someone who had a drinking problem who got sober. That was less
yeah.
relatable for me.
I think it's Brené Brown who goes on about telling ourselves stories, like it's kind of human nature for us to not believe in ourselves almost, isn't it? It sounds ridiculous, but it's like human nature. Negative bias takes over and we talk ourselves into not doing things instead of talking ourselves up. And I know I'm really a candidate for that. I do it all the time. I talk myself out of things. I tell myself I'm not good enough. I do things like that all the time. And that's something else that I've learned doing this podcast. At least I can recognize that. Whereas before, I just thought I was a shit person and I was always going to be a massive drinker and I was just rubbish. But now, when I am talking badly to myself, I can be actually, I think that's what this podcast has taught me, Hamish, is to also have that empathy coming in the other direction towards me.
Mhm. Yeah, do you feel more empathetic towards the drinker you were?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Yes. Yeah. I feel sad for her that she didn't know what I do now. And I think a lot of people that are sober now would resonate with that. They feel sad for the old self. And I know we say no regrets, but I do wish I could go back and give that girl a hug and say, you don't need to do this. I always say, give a party girl a hug and not a line of cocaine. And I think that's definitely what I needed was someone just to say, like, you're fine as you are. You don't need all this shit going on in your life. You're actually all right and you're going to be fine and you're smart and you're charismatic and you'll be able to get the job that you want. But I just didn't have any of those, phrases that I was good enough at going around in my head. So I just
mhm.
accepted second place.
Yeah. Well, the second biggest takeaway that I got from the podcast, and I really have you in thank to part for this one, is how you can find inspiration and fulfillment in the least likely of places. Right. So for as long as there's podcasts, so from about the age of 17 for me, I wanted to be a presenter. Did I think that my most successful presenting job would be presenting a sobriety podcast? Absolutely not. And the reason that I say that is because there might be someone listening today who can't fathom the idea of sobriety being something they could ever identify with, right? Because your friends drink and your families drink, and you love meeting friends who drinks and wines and cocktails, and you think you're more fun when you're drunk. And to be honest, you quite like the feeling of being drunk, and you feel that nobody would accept the idea of you kicking the booze. So someone might come up to you like they came up to Vic and go, "You're really not that bad. I don't know why you, of all people, are giving
Mm.
up." And I want to reassure you by saying that Vic and I were just the same. We felt all of those things 100%. And not only did I not know anyone sober, like I said, I didn't really know anything about sobriety at all. And then suddenly, oh, hi, Hame, you're going to start hosting a sobriety podcast next week. And that is a terrifying place to be in. So what I did with it is I started to learn about it slowly but surely. So I followed some Instagram pages, then I read a couple of books that you'd recommended me, Vic. Then I listened to a couple of podcasts, other sobriety podcasts or sober people talking in interviews, just to be inquisitive and listen to people's stories, which is the way that I like to consume anything I'm trying to learn. And then I began to research the topic of alcohol and what it is and how long it's been around for and why it's marketed the way it is and why it's such a popular drug for so many. And then finally, I started to use my own body and my own life as an experiment to learn a
Mhm.
little bit more. So I was
Yes.
like, well, what would it feel like to be 30 days sober? Or what does it feel like to be 100 days in or 6 months? And what does it feel like to do that first year? And how would it feel to go raving or public speaking or socializing or dancing without alcohol? What could I actually learn from this? And slowly but surely, I began to notice, I feel like the similarities that every single person has with regards to their feelings towards alcohol. There are patterns, whether or not you are like me, just like an occasional binge drinker, or whether or not you've developed a huge problem with alcohol. Like everyone that talks to me about this sort of feels the same kind of a love-hate relationship with alcohol. Maybe more love at the start, and then it gets a bit complex, and then
Yeah.
suddenly a bit of hate, or love 3 days a week, and then you hate yourself 4 days a week. Really, everyone that I speak to has kind of the same feelings towards it. And the more I learned, the more I experimented on myself, I slowly built up the confidence to be able to host a podcast on this topic and offer people some kind of advice on how to drink less or not at all. Even though I was someone that, I mean, I can't really emphasize how little I knew about this the day that I took on the podcast. And that is what that is what has inspired me in really any other field of my life, in that you can start something from square zero.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in my 30s. I'm not 10 and learning a new piano for the first time, and get to a point in a very fast period of time where you feel confident to hold conversations or to give advice on a topic. And I
But
really
how
hope, go on.
how well did you do that? Like, it's quite incredible, really, for somebody for me to ask you to go sober, and then you were like head first, weren't you? You were
Mm.
all in. I've never seen anything like it. You were reading the books. You're like, right, I'm going to do this, and not only I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it fucking well. And that was like really a joy to watch, wasn't it? Because you were like, okay, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be amazing. And it was never a question. You're not like me. I think you go into everything with a really positive frame of mind. And you were like, okay, I love this podcast. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to learn as much as I can about this. And that's why people loved you, Hamish. And it was because you were a normal drinker. And that opened it up to so many people, just that one point. Here's this guy, he's never done it before, but look at him change and look at him learn, look at him grow. It's really an interesting perspective being from somebody who wasn't a problem drinker. And that's what's made this good, is because you tried everything and never questioned the path that you're on. You're like, I'm definitely feeling better. I'm going to keep doing this because I know this is good for me. And that is an interesting story for everybody out there.
I do, well, it's kind of you to say that. I do feel like it is, sobriety is kind of like pulling at a thread, and you slowly realize, oh, there's a lot to this. Like, this is
Yeah.
not just about not drinking alcohol. This affects your physical and mental health. This affects your identity. This affects your relationships. This affects your friendships. This affects so much. So I guess the more I discovered, the more interesting I found it, the more motivated I was to discover more, the more people wanted to share their stories with us.
Yeah.
And then it was just sort of a compounding, and then suddenly, like you know more than me, you're living in a world where all of your thoughts are about this, or lots of conversations. People are like, oh, you host the sober podcast. Let me unload my drinking
Yeah.
relationship, my relationship with alcohol onto you at a
Yeah.
wedding or like in a supermarket.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are always interesting conversations. So I guess the more I proved, or the more I realized this topic is not dull, the more I threw myself into it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what about you? You know, you were similar to me. You were a
That's
binge
the
drinker,
same. Yeah.
zero knowledge of sobriety, zero people in your life that you liked who were sober, and now you're years sober. Like this is your this is your job, and this is your life, and this is what you do every day, and you've got books and blogs and podcasts on it. How did you get to today's point? Because, like I said, there'll be people listening today who are 30 days sober and we're like, this feels like an uphill climb.
Yeah.
This feels way too hard. Maybe I'll do it for another week or two. How did you get to the point where you are today? And how fast do you feel like you got there?
Well, it's funny, isn't it, Hamish? Because those people, I was those people. I was that person lying in bed, Googling, am I an alcoholic? I was the one, lying in bed again with, terrible anxiety pumping around my body. I have been there. And I certainly didn't arrive at sobriety polished or enlightened. or ready to be a voice for anyone. That was never, ever my intention. I arrived clueless, like you, terrified, and with absolutely no idea what I was doing. So, yeah, I was exactly the same. Everybody starts out there, don't they? But what I did do the first day was I started writing, not because I thought anyone would read it, but because I needed to make sense of what was happening to me. I didn't know that that would be something I would even enjoy, but it felt like the right thing to naturally do at that time. Then I started sharing my story, and that's where everything changed. People started listening and they started talking back. They shared their stories with me. They said, "Me too." And I think that's what you're describing there, Hamish, is people saying, "Me too. I felt like this too." And suddenly, when I got to that point, sobriety didn't feel lonely anymore. And it didn't feel silent. It became more of a conversation. And eventually that conversation led to Lucy, and that conversation luckily led to you. And that's what's been so nice about it. It has been a learning process for me. And somewhere along the line, I think my mission changed a little bit. At first, I'll admit this, I thought I was simply helping others because I'm a people pleaser, right?
Mm.
So it was my intention, right? I'm going to help people because that's the sort of weird thing that I do. But what I did not realize was that in doing so, I was also helping myself. The more I supported people, the more educated I became. So the longer you do this, the more you read, the more podcasts you listen to, the more posts you do, the more you learn. And the more I researched and wrote and listened and learned, the stronger and steadier my sobriety became. Helping others was kind of like my anchor, Hame. It was like my purpose. And it was a reason to keep going when, for me, sobriety felt hard. It was kind of what kept me on track. I didn't just accidentally end up here. I did work at it. I must say that I didn't accidentally, have this podcast and do this with you. It took me a while to create everything that we do. And I showed up and stayed curious. I stayed honest, actually. I think that's a huge point to make, Hamish, that sober people are extremely honest. And I refuse to sugarcoat sobriety. I refuse to make it miserable either. And I've tried to tell the truth all the way through with humour, compassion, and a little bit of humanity. So how did I go from a clueless binge drinker to someone with a voice in this space? I don't know.
Mm.
With you, we worked at it. I think that's what we did. And I let myself be vulnerable. I always remember when people ask me, why do you do this? And how have you done it? All I ever answer is with honesty. I just stayed honest. And that's all I do. And that's all I do with my writing. And every post I do is like, all I know how to be is honest. That's all I have. And for somehow, I don't know, but that honesty has changed my life, and it's, changed your life and actually the lives of other people, which is weird.
Mm.
8 years later, I am still learning, that's for sure. But I've learned how to enjoy this little life of mine and doing this podcast and all the things that run alongside it. You've also made it very easy, Hamish, especially since sharing this whole thing with you. You've made my job so enjoyable and so bloody easy. And that has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much. Likewise. I would say my third and final biggest lesson that I've learned is, and I guess I mentioned it earlier, is really what I feel is the biggest secret about going sober, which is
Yeah.
just how little sobriety is about not drinking alcohol.
Great one.
Not once in what, 3.5 years have I ever met another sober person and spoken about the fact that we don't drink alcohol. There is nothing interesting about the fact neither of us drink alcohol. That is really about as deep as that conversation can go. Oh, yeah, when they have shots, I have an orange juice. There's no substance to that conversation. Sobriety, like I said, positively impacts, I would say, almost every area of your life, right? For me, it has sprung weird, unlikely new hobbies. It gave me a new career, including this podcast. It helped me get my first 9 to 5 because the manager that interviewed me in the final interview
Yeah.
coincidentally was a listener, which was a wild coincidence.
Yeah.
Um, it helped me open some incredible doors where we toured our live show to Sydney and Melbourne and New Zealand and London. I've gotten to interview people that I never would have met, like Fatboy Slim and Lee Mack, Ziggy Alberts, Ulrika Johnson, James Brown, not that one, Millie McIntosh, Osher, Yumi Stimes, Sharon Casey, G. McCarthy, Maz Compton. Those are just a few, and there have been masses of others. And somehow along the way, you and I won a podcast award, which seems crazy. I always kind of try and emphasize anyone that writes to us or comes up to us like, "Oh, what you do is great." I'm like, and I do speak for you on this regard. I'm like, I can't emphasize how much we are just two complete idiots. So, like, the fact that anyone could go like, "Oh, what you guys have done is great." It's like, no, 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 no. You could easily do what we're doing. But you don't have to start a podcast, but you could easily take the steps that we've taken to get sober, then try and help the next person get sober. It's not as complex as it might look like from the outside. It's
Yeah.
just sort of doing your best, like you say, being honest and having some potentially awkward conversations. I would say my sobriety as a result of that has helped me improve my physical health, my mental health, save and invest money for the first time in my life. I've become a better partner and husband. I became a trained breathwork instructor. I became a coffee connoisseur wanker.
Yeah, that's true.
I said to you, Vic, my Christmas presents this year, a coffee grinder and a book on coffee. It's helped me grow in confidence socially and better understand what I actually love to do and, more importantly, don't love to do, what gives me energy, what drains me, what can I still enjoy doing without alcohol. And really, the truth is that is almost everything except trance music.
Yeah.
Trance music is shit without booze and drugs, and that will
Yeah.
always be shit without booze
Yeah.
and drugs. It's actually probably pretty shit with booze and drugs, but it was
Yeah.
I could tolerate it. Also, trance night is like, do you want to go raving? Yeah. How long is it? 7 hours. No, I don't want to do that.
I think our trance days are over, Hamish.
Yeah, I'm sad they ever started, really. I don't think I ever enjoyed one of those nights. Um, my sobriety has given me countless hours back, and it's helped me develop an enormous amount of joy for seemingly tiny, insignificant, trivial things
Oh,
that
yes.
anyone sober will be nodding and be like, "Oh yeah, tiny, like clearly shit things now give me huge joy." Like, fucking, what's the lamest thing I've been eaten
Cuddling
up
well,
for?
cuddling my children now, or even my child taking my hand. I know that's probably the same whether you're
Yeah,
a
yeah.
drinker or not, but those little things, those precious little memories that you know aren't gonna last, I really store them now. Like, I'm really conscious of those tiny little things that I know aren't gonna last forever. They're so special to me now.
I'm going to go even smaller and less significant than that, which was this week. We woke up before the kids, which doesn't happen often, probably the first time in months, and we had a coffee in bed. And
Oh,
it's like,
yes.
this is
This is the life.
so joyous.
Yeah.
I never know. I obviously got sober when I became a parent, so I never know if this is like a parent win or a
Yeah.
sobriety win,
I think it's a
but
mix, yeah.
it's probably a mix. But I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like, this is as good as my life is getting right now. It's like a
Yeah.
quiet time, drinking a coffee in bed. That's it's probably making me a bad parent to say this, but that would be the
Yeah.
highlight of my day.
I
Right?
mean, I went to the shops earlier. I did this weekly shop on my own now and just
Mm,
walking the aisles staring at cans of Spam. That's like my favourite
mm,
thing to do. Yeah. It's
yeah.
those moments, those basically what we're saying is our special moments are either holding our hands with our children, but really, if we really go deeper, this is what you said, it's
Yes.
going places on our own
Instead
without
of
the
holding my
children.
child's hand, holding a can of Spam in
Yeah.
aisle 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels the same actually.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the point we're making. We no longer lead booze and drugs to experience these enormous joys. You begin to see and experience enormous joys in the
Yeah.
seemingly normal. That is
So
really one of the sweet spots of sobriety. And
yeah.
I know that you kind of feel the same about all that stuff as me, Vic.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you is, instead of just reiterating what I've said in different words, was what would you say to anyone who's still stuck in that mindset of thinking that sobriety is about giving something up, right? It's about making your life a little bit worse and a little bit harder rather than seeing it as a potentially good move. Like, they only see the cup half empty. What would you say to those people?
I think it's so hard when you're stuck in a rut. You're kind of repeating your behavior, going out every weekend, and it just becomes so normalized that you continue the habit and you think you're going to be like that forever. But I think what I would say, Hamish, is you've done that. You've tried drinking. How's it going for you? You know, how is it actually going for you? Like, sit back for a second and reassess. Is drinking going well? I don't know many people who would say, my drinking is great. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with the amount I drink. Like, I am the best drinker ever. And I love feeling hungover and I love being sick on my shoes. I love it all. if you're a binge drinker, it's highly likely that you are questioning your alcohol intake to some degree. You might not be lying in bed thinking, I'm never ever going to do this again. But there might be times when you're hungover and thinking, is this what life is? Is this my future? Is this what every weekend is going to be like? So I think my message would be that, you've done drinking. Is it making you feel motivated? Is it making you fulfilled or happy? And if it's a no, then maybe it's time to try a different way for a bit. That's all, just for a year. I mean, I say a year because I think really all the good bits of sobriety definitely kick in after a year. So yeah, give it a year, give something a year. You may have given drinking 20 or 25 years. How about you just give sobriety a year just to dip your toe in and see what it likes? You've done booze, I would say. It might be time for a little life upgrade. And as we say, Hamish, we always guarantee that that will happen. It's the only guarantee we will ever make. But in that year, so much stuff is going to happen that's going to make you feel the opposite to what booze is. You're going to start feeling motivated. You're going to start feeling happier and you're going to start feeling fulfilled. And that can be
That's
huge.
true. Of all the thousands of conversations we've had with people who have gone sober or that still drink, never has anyone said to us, God, I regretted going sober for that year.
Never.
Like,
Never happened.
never, never. Yeah,
No.
there's ups and downs, but no one's ever been like, oh, it was such a relief to go back to drinking after my 6 months of sobriety. That doesn't seem to happen.
No, never happens. Never happened once.
We have quite a lot of people who go back to drinking and they're like, oh shit, this is crap. And they come back to sobriety.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. But yeah.
And if they say they're
not
going
once.
back, well, as soon as they say, I'm going to go and try moderation, I don't say it, but really in my head, I'm saying, see you in a couple of months.
Yeah.
You disappear for a bit and you're going to go on a massive bender and you're probably going to think you're enjoying it for the first couple of weeks. And then it's going to go downhill very, very quickly. And then you're going to be, hey, Vic, I'm sober again. And I'll be like, yes, welcome back.
Yeah. I met someone recently at a drinks party who said that. I was sober for 2.5 years and I went back for a bit and I've been sober for 2.5 years since. Like, I've heard this story before.
I think once you start, especially if you get a little way in, it's always going to be something that you want to get back to, isn't it?
Mhm.
Always.
Absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to get to the point where I try and explain why I've made this decision. Okay.
Okay.
And the first point I wanted to make, 'cause I know someone will be thinking this, is I'm not leaving because I had a massive blowout and drunk 10 pints of Guinness. Okay.
No.
That is not the reason. There have been numerous situations over the last 3.5 years when I've been given a glass. I was like, if I drink this, the podcast is over. I never did drink it. And I didn't have a blowout last week. And I was like, shit, Vic, I'm out. Okay. That is not the reason.
Damn it, that would have been a good episode, Hamish. The relapse.
Well, Vic and I have always joked that a good way for us to end the podcast together would be to host a live show. And then during the opening credits, we do a Jägermeister bomb and we're like, boom, we're back on drinking. Podcast is over. See you later. It would have been cool. We also thought about maybe having a shot of Jägermeister after everyone's chair watching, but we thought that is potentially illegal. And we don't need to drag everyone down with us to end their sobrieties when we end ours.
Yeah. Although
we have talked about that. That's not the way this podcast ends. You could end it that way. I've decided not to.
No, it's not going to end. It's not going to end in that way. I can assure you.
Good. I'm also not leaving the podcast because Vic and I have had some massive fallout, and I'm not enjoying it anymore. And we're like, fuck this, I'm out. I'm thrilled that I'm ending it whilst I'm still enjoying it. And I'm still loving our recording days. And sadly for you, Vic, you will be stuck with me as a friend in your life forever.
Yay.
Just because the podcast ends does not end that. With that being said, it's been such a tricky decision because what I say to anyone who asks me about the podcast is that I don't think I will ever have as great a job in my life as this, in that we do something and it feels silly and trivial that we sit and just sort of 80% of it is talking about cocks and vaginas, but 20% is about sobriety. And somehow it reaches people who are in trouble and who can lean on us and feel like they've got a friend and feel like a familiar voice is joining them on their dog walk, and it can help them. And I don't know, other than doctors, I don't know many people who have jobs that help people's lives. I've always said I wasn't clever enough to be a doctor or brave enough to be a fireman, and I don't want to be in the army. But talking about, it turns out, sobriety in a attempted comedic way I
Yeah.
can try and do. And so walking away from like the best job you've ever had that helps people has certainly not been an easy decision.
Yeah.
And the true reason that I have made this decision is kind of an ironic one, which is that the same reason that I joined the podcast and went sober, which was to become a better parent and a better partner, is also the reason that I feel like I have to leave. So I moved down to Sydney a year ago, and Vic and I have been doing this remotely for a year. But now that I've got this sort of 9 to 5, 5 days a week job, and I'm not as junior as I was last year, but I've had some more time on my hands, and it's the first time in my life I've had a job really. And we've now had this second child, Romy, so we've got a baby and a toddler. I feel as though I no longer have the amount of time that I want to put into this podcast to make it as good as possible. And that time is now pulling me away from my wife and my kids. And as you know, as well as anyone, Vic, with 3 kids, mornings and evenings are complete mayhem. So you
Yeah.
can't record then. And I can't give up my weekends, and I don't want you to give up your weekends either, as the only time that I could potentially record.
Mm.
So, although Liz has been my absolute number one biggest supporter during this podcast from day one, and I hope has benefited the most from my sobriety, she is also the one who has to, like she is right now, please piss off and take the kids out because I've got to record, or please sit alone watching TV whilst I edit an episode or I write an episode, or please stay at home alone with the kids so I can travel and do a live show or go meet someone to interview them. And I want to give her that time with me back, and I want to be more available to the kids because this is a all-encompassing job. Vic and I either write, I would say we write and edit and record podcasts a couple of hours a week, but we are always, or I certainly am always on in my brain thinking about things to post on social media, or thinking about what should we record next week, or thinking
Yeah.
about who should we invite to be a guest, or how should we find a new sponsor. It's way more than a 9 to 5,
Yeah.
and I'm
It's gonna be like
barely
giving up
juggling
booze for
balls.
you because it's
But
like a
yeah,
preoccupation, isn't it? Like the space where, like, what is gonna be going, there's not gonna be nothing in your brain, Hamish. I don't know what you're gonna do with all that
I
brain
know.
space because, like, when you're preoccupied with alcohol, that's all you think about all the time. And then you had this. It's almost like the equivalent and a different addiction, which is
That's
doing the
true.
podcast. And now you're gonna take that away. So you're gonna have to fill it with your new job, aren't you? And family and all the other lovely things.
I'm still going to get podcast ideas. I'll just text you every now and then with a good
Okay, please
podcast
do.
idea.
Yes,
I don't
thank
know how to
you.
turn that switch off, so
No.
I'll carry on doing that.
Okay, good.
Another reason that I was conscious of not wanting the podcast to get stale, and I felt like if I'm not giving it the proper time, and I've been doing this for 3.5 years, I don't want people to feel like, okay, I've heard Hame's bollocks.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to repeat myself, or people to get bored of listening to me and my perspective on drinking, or the way that I got sober, because I know that my story might be relatable to some of you, but it certainly won't be relatable to all of you. And I know that the reason this podcast works is that you and I have got a good connection and we work well as a sort of presenting duo, mainly
Yeah.
because we make each other laugh and we take the piss out of each other a lot. But I sort of feel as if you are more than capable of creating that connection with really anyone, as I've seen you do with practically anyone you ever meet. So I'm not unique in the situation of us clicking as a podcasting duo. So I
That's
certainly don't
great.
feel
Thank
nervous
you.
about that going forward.
Yeah.
Um, as for, I guess, the next steps for me, I'm not going to get drunk today. That's not something people are like, oh, great. So now you're sober. Like, does that mean we can party tonight? I'm like, no, that's not the reason I'm giving up either. I don't intend to go back to drinking alcohol straight away just because I don't have a podcast keeping me accountable every week. I guess my situation or my approach to alcohol has certainly not changed as a result of giving up this podcast. I've always said, I don't know if it's forever, but I'm going to take it indefinitely. It's just going to sort of carry on like that as far as I know. And I will stay a listener of this podcast. I will stay a supporter of this podcast. I will stay a Coupler member for anyone who wants to reach out. And I would say this might not be the last time you ever heard of me, because I'd be quite up for popping in for a special. I'd be quite up for interviewing anyone that you feel like you don't want to interview, because I
Yes.
absolutely love doing those. So
Yeah,
this
you're
might not be
brilliant
the
at
final
those.
time. Well, I
Yeah.
do love those. Those have been like one of the highlights of the whole thing. So it might
Yeah.
not be the end for me.
I
Oh,
hope not,
God.
Hamish. I hope not, because that would be too sad. But yeah. And I'm really nervous in front of famous people. So if I get a famous person, I'm going to be straight on your case. I'm going to be like, Hamish, come on. You got to
Great.
come.
I will
You got to do
happily do.
some work.
But I'm sure people are listening and go, okay, cool, Hame, you can move on now, but what does that mean for the podcast? So, Vic, what do you want to do next? What is this? Well, I told you this bombshell, which
It
I was
was a bit
terrified
you
to tell you for a
but you
long
did it in a
time.
casual way. How long had you been thinking about it before you actually
I
slipped that into the
can't
conversation?
I cannot tell you how much sleep I lost over this. Like,
Oh
the first
god.
person I told was Liz, and I was like,
Yes.
"Okay, I need to do it." And I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what words to use, I don't know. It needs to be so clear in my head that I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say it, then go back on it, and my reasons have to be completely, like, legit. So
Yes,
I
yeah.
lost a lot of sleep. In the end, I
Oh,
told Vic I wanted to do it face to face, and we never really got the chance. We saw each other on the Sunshine Coast briefly, but I just couldn't pick the right time. And eventually, I did it after a recording episode, and I was like, "I want to give you as much time as possible." I was terrified the way that you would respond, and
yeah.
actually, what I underestimated was A, how lovely you are, and B, how much of a people pleaser that you are. And you're like, "Yeah, no, fair enough, that's all good." And then about an hour later, you're like, "Okay, hey, holy shit, this is actually like, I'm struggling to deal with this news. I think I'm going to cry." I was like, "Yeah, it was just delayed. You were wonderful." And then I feel like the news landed. You're like, "Oh, this is big."
Yeah. No, I do you know what? I think I felt it coming.
Mhm.
I don't know why. I just felt like, gosh, this isn't going to last forever. I thought there's something going on here. I thought with the new job, I thought he's not going to have time. I just remember thinking that this is going to be hard for him. He's not going to have time. He needs to give this job 100%. And I think when you told me, instead of being shocked at first, I think I was like, okay. But it took me a while to get used to the idea, and I did cry as soon as we put the phone down that day. I was like, oh,
Mm, mm,
and it wasn't because I'm sad. It's because I'm happy. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm just happy about what a wonderful time we had. I know that sounds soppy and stupid, but
No.
I'm not sad. I'm really grateful and I'm really, really happy that, I met you and we got to have this amazing time together. And we did all these incredible things. We traveled the world and won an award and all this crazy stuff that we did, which I'm going to get into in a minute. So I'm not going to completely lose it.
Okay,
And
definitely.
yeah, and when you told me I was shocked, but I think I felt it coming. So I thought, I knew that this couldn't last forever. And I knew that you'd go out on the crest of a wave because that's what you needed to do because your family and your job's more important than this. And I realized that you weren't going to have enough time to do it with everything that was going on in your life. And I just felt like, well, that's the right thing for him to do. I didn't feel any animosity whatsoever. The same with Lucy. It's that change thing. People move on, people change. And I'm still stuck here like a yeah. Ah, yeah, so I am gonna carry on. There you go.
Great.
That's the
Okay,
news.
tell
I
us.
thought when I thought about quitting, I was like, "Okay, this never is gonna be the same." And I felt like, gosh, right, I same as you, I had some very sleepless nights about it. And I didn't feel sad, as I said. I just felt grateful. But then I was like, well, what shall I do? Is anyone even going to listen? Will people continue listening if Hamish and I aren't, if it isn't us? I couldn't comprehend it almost. But then I had a few weeks since it's probably been a month, hasn't it, Haim, since you told me? And
Yeah.
we've been having a few chats about it here and there and talking about what we're going to do. And I've just been really mulling it over. And for once, I didn't want to rush into anything. I just wanted to have a really long, hard think about it. And I'm actually now feeling excited about it. Not in a way that you're leaving, but like I feel like Sober Awkward still has life in it. And I don't quite know what that's gonna look like. I'm definitely sad that you're leaving, but I've had time to digest it and I'm really in a good place with it now. So don't worry. I did think about stopping, as I said, but the truth is, I genuinely love doing Sober Awkward. I know it helps so many people. And whether it sounds silly or not, I feel partly responsible for the listeners. Can you
Oh,
understand that,
Vic,
Hamish?
that's why I struggled to stop. I was like, then I was like, is that ego? I was like, I feel like people have
Yeah.
attached their sobrieties to the podcast. So
Yeah.
if I stop and people are like, oh, fuck it, like, hey, stop, so I'm going to go back drinking. I was like, that is all in my head. That doesn't exist. That is
Yeah.
just ego talking. And this podcast is kind of good for your ego, and that people come up and like, oh, you helped me get sober. And I was like, I can't carry on, A, because of it's nice for your ego, or B,
Yeah.
because I feel responsible for anyone who's like, the podcast helped me get sober. That's not enough of a reason to keep doing it.
Yeah. It's a funny one. It's a funny one. But I know it helps people because we get messages all
Mhm.
the time. This podcast has helped me. So I feel like I want to continue it, not only for them, because that's what I feel like is right to do, but also for me because it does keep me in check. It keeps my sobriety close to my heart because I'm always working on it. And as we said earlier, I'm still always learning. So not only am I doing it for the listeners, I want to get on with it for myself as well. I want to keep going for them and for me, really. And I love this podcast. I love what it stands for and I love what it gives people. A giggle on their morning walk. If that's all, Hamish, then I think it's worth doing it still. Just that message of I'm on my morning walk, I'm with the dog, no one's going near me because I'm laughing like a lunatic. That's all I want. And that's all I've ever wanted with this podcast. Some honest conversation and a safe space to feel less alone. So I think over the next 3 months, I'm going to have some guest hosts. That's what I've decided to do. I'm going to invite loads of people that I know to come and do a guest host spot on Sober Awkward, find out about their stories, cover some topics like we always do. Rather than having them as guests, I'm going to have them doing your job, basically, Hamish, find out the science and the stats behind the conversations, like in a very sober, awkward way. I don't want them to just talk about their own sobriety because there's so many podcasts out there that do that already. So I want to dive into the more confronting, funny, messy, and affirming parts of sober life. Sober, awkward style, of course. There'll be some friends, some well known names, and I will just be bringing the laughter and the awkwardness and some heart and some honesty and everything else that you brought to the podcast as well, Hamish, I hope. And if that doesn't work, then maybe I'll end it. But I'll hope to continue. That's my plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. So please don't go anywhere, Sober Awkward listeners. Stick with me. Let's keep this awkward show on the road.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, I guess the final thing for me to say is an enormous thank you. Firstly, to anyone that's ever listened to any episode of this podcast. I understand there are millions of podcasts out there. There are actually lots of really good sobriety ones too. So I'm so grateful for anyone that clicked on one of ours and spent an hour listening to our nonsense. That is easily going to be one of the things that I'm most grateful for with this whole journey. That being said, you all know way too much about me, so please keep that to yourselves. People don't need to know about my balls and testicles and throwing up and pooing places, to be honest. Let's try and keep me as some sort of acceptable member of society. I also know nothing about you, so this feels unfair as a relationship. I have been lucky enough to meet loads of our listeners either at our shows or just by bumping into you in the streets, which has been such a joy of this whole experience. Please do keep coming up to me and saying hi if you see me. And for those that I've not met and I can't thank in person, I would love to give a sort of digital awkward cuddle to you now too, and to tell you that I love and appreciate you as well. And finally, Vic, the biggest thank you obviously is to you. Firstly, for getting sober yourself and setting off this entire domino effect. Your blog grew into the podcast, and then not into one, but into two books. And then you start this podcast, and when you were looking for a host, you thought of me, and you gave me my dream job for 3.5 years. And I guess even more importantly than that, and the podcast and what we have grown, is I've made an incredibly close friend on and off the mic, and someone that I love, and that's someone that makes me laugh, and that's someone I'm excited to stay in touch with and be a part of each other's families' lives, as I said at the start. That has been the greatest joy. So thank you for making my dream a reality. You are literally the most responsible person for that. I'm only ever going to look back on the last few years with enormous pride and joy, and I will continue to be the biggest Sober Awkward fan as a listener. I will write rude comments on any photos that you would like me to write rude comments on. I will come to live shows and heckle. I will do everything I can to spread the Sober Awkward love, even though I'm not hosting it anymore. So huge thanks to you, Vic, and to anyone who's ever listened to any episode.
Yeah. Thank you, Hamish. As for me, I'm going to have to end this, aren't I? I'm going to read some notes from other people just before we end the podcast, but I just wanted to say a proper thank you to you. I'm going to try and keep it together. You've been solid, you've been reliable, you've been beautifully honest, and I'm absolutely gutted that you're leaving. But I also know it's your time. Your work and your family come first. As much as I hate losing you, it feels right knowing that we built together something that was truly special. We created a hugely successful podcast side by side, 50-50. Oh, I'll take a deep breath. All the way. People always say working with friends can be tough. Someone usually ends up doing more, someone burns out, someone feels resentful. But I want to say this clearly, and I want the listeners to know too. We've shown up after sleepless nights tending to our kids and newborns, unpaid, mentally exhausted, unsure, and sometimes vulnerable. We never complained. We never shirked the work. We never left one another hanging. It has genuinely been a dream partnership, and I know how rare this is, and I know how hard it will be to replace. We won the best wellbeing podcast in Australia together, and we did that simply by telling the truth, by sharing our stories and not pretending to be anything other than two awkward humans trying to figure it out. I will always be grateful for that. Not because we won that award, but because we showed up and we laughed and we stood on stages together and we traveled, and we did it all because we cared about helping people think differently about alcohol. And Hamish, I know you hate hearing this, but it's true. You've saved lives. And we do not read every email out loud, but we see them. Messages from every corner of the world. People saying, sober, awkward, saved me. I have a baby now. I have my relationship back. I'm still here because of you two. And that's because of your voice and your humour and your honesty and your heart. Please never downplay your impact. You really helped people. You changed lives. Ah, dear. And I won't ever forget that. And lastly, I'm going to miss you terribly. Thank you for being there for me, not just on the podcast, but as a brilliant friend. I will look back on this time with you with so much pride. Oh, God, finding this hard. Knowing we created something meaningful and joyful together. I am nothing but grateful, and you're welcome back anytime. Oh, dear. How are you after that?
Yeah. That was
You're pretty good. I'm
well, I've been
useless at this sort of
been
thing.
preparing for this all month, really.
Oh, I've got a couple of messages from friends here. This is from Lani. To my darling friends, Vic and Hamish, it's an extremely sad day to hear that Hamish is leaving the podcast. Hamish, you're so different to Lucy, but you brought an amazing new balance to Vic's hilarity and experiences that I could definitely relate to, and it allowed me to question my own relationship with alcohol. You're such a great example. We'll miss the laughs, the great interviews. I won't miss your awful Australian accent. Please never do it again, but I wish you all the best for you and Liz and your beautiful family. And we love you, Vic. This is from Dan. Dear Hamish, I'm gutted to hear you're leaving the podcast, but I know it's for the right reasons. You've been awesome. I know from the minute I first met you in the pub, ironically, on Sunshine Coast, you were going to be an absolutely perfect fit. And you've done even better for that. Well done for being a brilliant sober person, but more importantly, a brilliant person, full stop. I know your hard work has been helping countless people, and that's not to be underestimated. Well done. I look forward to keeping up the friendship and being rude about your football team. From my mum and dad, dear Hamish, we're going to miss you in the podcast. Your laugh and putting up with Victoria. I think it's going to be impossible to replace you. Thank you for the years that you've put into helping others. You have changed lives and I'm sure saved lives. Thank you, with Maureen and Roger. Here's from John. Very sad to see you leave the podcast. It's been an amazing time getting to know you, Liz, Sunny, and Romy. From your arrival on the Sunshine Coast and your chance meeting with Vic at the local cafe, then agreeing to give up booze for the podcast. What an amazing journey. You will always be an integral part of Sober Awkward. I've got a message here on my phone. Wait 1 second, from Anita, who's just messaged me because I haven't told anyone yet. So obviously it's hard to try and get messages from people. But I told Anita, dearest Hame, the lanky one, I can't believe you're going. Huge, heartful thank you for sharing your boozy stories, honesty, wisdom, vulnerability with us. It's meant a lot. Your posh voice, interview skills, dick jokes, and professionalism lifted the quality of the show to another level, and you'll be missed. Craig David, Pinocchio, and the cricket will forever remind me of you. Big love and hugs, Anita. And the last one is from Liz, your wife. Hey, that's going to make me cry, this one, and you. This is the one we've got to end on, I'm afraid. I know today is so bittersweet for you. You love recording the podcast with Vic every week, but you always feel so guilty about locking yourself in the bedroom to record it, even though it's only for an hour. That is because you're the most selfless person who is always putting everyone before yourself, but mostly your family. We are so incredibly proud of you and the community you have created with Vic and Lucy. I love that our kids will be able to look back and listen to you putting out such amazing episodes that are truly inspiring and helping people all over the world. And to you, Vic, you are family to us. Thank you for taking us along with you and the Sober Awkward journey, from the live shows to family holidays. The most wonderful part has been the time we've been able to spend with you and your family over the past 3 and a bit years. Keep being awkward. We love you.
Oh,
There. Oh,
that's not me. Oh
yeah.
gosh, they were
Yeah,
wonderful. Those are the people that have listened, I think, to every single
they are.
episode that we've ever
Yeah,
done.
they are. They are the 5 people who have said they've listened to every single episode since the start. So there you go. They all matter, but those particularly matter a lot too. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll miss you
but
though, Hamish. I will
oh,
miss you. I don't know how I'm gonna replace the quality of you. Do you know what I mean? Like, the fact that you were like a trained actor and you'd done podcasting before and you just knew the drill, it made it so bloody easy. I know I said that earlier, but yeah, that's gonna be hard to replace, and I'm gonna miss the ease of that. It's gonna be hard to find someone who brings the quality that you bring.
well, I hope that they'll be out there though. I'm nothing like Lucy, and Lucy did a fantastic job. So it'll look different and feel different, but I think there is, like you said,
Oh,
there is plenty of life in this podcast still, and
yeah.
you're the driving force. So as long as you're there, there is the sort of pillar to lean on that can help people out. So
Great.
it's weird. I feel like it feels so big, doesn't it? It feels
It
like
does. It
I
feels
kind of
big
feel
for
like
us.
I'm dying. Feels like either
I
I'm
feel like
dying or this is the last time that we ever speak, but neither of
this is
those
a living
actually
funeral.
true.
It's a living funeral. That's what it
That
feels
was my
like.
eulogy. Yeah, like, I'm not dying. Like, you and I will
Oh,
probably speak again tomorrow,
yeah.
but it feels like we're sort of saying goodbye here, which is
If you
very
do
strange.
die if you do die, I'll have a lot of stuff to I can probably do all your
I
eulogy
mean, you
stuff.
could AI the shit. My voice will be in your life forever. You could AI the shit out of thousands of episodes we've done together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, there's nothing really to say. I'm tempted to end with a cock joke, but I actually don't
Yes,
want to like
I am too.
undervalue what we've just recorded
No.
and
No.
what we've been through the last 3 years. So there
Yeah.
really is no cock joke on this one, or no cheesy quote, or nothing silly, really. It's
No.
just, I guess, thank you for everything. And I think I feel like my relationship with So Awkward is not ending. So I'm just going from host to listener, and that feels nice too.
Yeah. Take all the responsibility away and all you've got left I won't be annoying you with text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning going, "Have you done this? Have you done that? What are you doing now? What are we gonna do?" Yeah, so that's gonna be nice
You'll
for
still be
you.
annoying me with text messages, just not
Yeah,
about the
probably.
podcast. Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
fine.
ask you loads and loads of questions about the podcast still.
Yeah.
"What about this? What do you think of this, Hamish?" "No, I won't, I
Well,
promise."
good luck with it. Good luck with
Thanks,
it. I'm
Hame.
excited to
Thanks,
see what it
Hame.
looks like
I
next.
appreciate you and, yeah, good luck with your job and everything you do, and, everyone's gonna miss you terribly, and I'm dreading telling everybody that you're leaving, but, it's time, and we wish you all the love and luck in the world.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, can we go now?
So let's go. Let's
Can I go
go.
and cry on my own in the shower?
That's it. Yeah, go cry on your own in the shower.
I'll send you some
Do
pictures.
if you could. I'll be doing what I do alone in the shower. Great. We knew that, everyone. We knew that they can't joke. It feels right to end with a wanking joke.
Good work, Hamish. Love you loads.
Love you too. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Oh,
Oh.
that was great.